Imagine a world where a military victory does not guarantee control. What if, after a conflict, the victor finds themselves more isolated and burdened than ever before? Today, we're looking at this possibility. If Russia were to win the war in Ukraine, could they truly maintain control? Let's explore the myriad challenges that lie ahead for Russia in sustaining its hold over Ukraine. To understand the feasibility of Russia maintaining control over Ukraine, we must consider the substantial financial constraints that would follow a military victory. Winning a war often comes with heavy economic burdens, and Russia would likely face significant costs in the aftermath. For instance, rebuilding damaged infrastructure, maintaining military presence, and administering occupied territories all require extensive resources. Historically, post-war reconstruction has proven to be an enormous financial undertaking. In Iraq, for example, the US spent over $60 billion on reconstruction after the invasion in 2003, and even then, many projects were plagued by mismanagement and corruption. The costs didn't just stop there. Ongoing military operations and the need for security continued to drain resources for years. As the World Bank noted, rebuilding in conflict zones is not only expensive but can take decades to stabilize. In Afghanistan, similar financial strains were apparent. The US and its allies spent an estimated $145 billion on reconstruction and developmental efforts over 2 decades. Despite these investments, the country remains unstable, illustrating that financial commitment does not guarantee lasting peace or control. Therefore, Russia's costs of maintaining control in Ukraine could be compounded. As noted by economist Anders Asland, the financial burden of occupying Ukraine could cripple the Russian economy and limit its ability to sustain a prolonged military presence. This could lead to domestic unrest and challenge the Kremlin's ability to govern effectively. Now, let's turn our attention to Ukraine's own historical context of resistance. Ukraine has shown a strong desire for independence and democratic governance over the years. A key moment was the 1991 independence vote, where over 90% of Ukrainians chose sovereignty after decades of Soviet control. This desire for self-determination has only intensified with movements like the Orange Revolution in 2004 and the Dignity Revolution in 2014, also known as the Euromaidan protests. These movements were driven by a demand for transparency, democracy, and a rejection of corrupt governance. Considering this history, any attempt by Russia to impose control could ignite fierce backlash rooted in national pride and a collective memory of resistance. As political analyst Taras Kuzio notes, Ukraine has a strong sense of national identity that has been forged through centuries of struggle, and any attempt to suppress it will likely provoke a fierce resistance. Next, let's examine the economic implications of occupying and governing Ukraine, which would place a substantial financial burden on Russia. Historical precedents illustrate the high costs associated with foreign occupations. For instance, during the US occupation of Iraq, the estimated financial cost reached over $1 trillion, not including the long-term expenses related to veterans' care and reconstruction efforts. The US faced significant expenditures in military operations, infrastructure rebuilding, and maintaining a stable government, all while dealing with ongoing insurgency. In Afghanistan, the US and NATO allies similarly incurred enormous costs, over $2 trillion spent over 2 decades, much of which was directed toward military presence, training local forces, and reconstruction projects. As former US Defense Secretary Robert Gates pointed out, the costs of war can be significant, and the challenges of creating stability can far exceed initial military expenditures. For Russia, the situation in Ukraine could mirror these costly experiences. They would need to invest heavily in infrastructure repair, administration, and military presence, all while trying to quell resistance. If international sanctions remain in place, the economic strain would only increase, potentially leading to widespread discontent within Russia itself as the costs of occupation outweigh the perceived benefits of control. Another important factor is political legitimacy. Russia could struggle to justify its control over Ukraine, especially if the local population views the regime as an occupier. This lack of legitimacy could lead to instability and unrest, making it challenging for Russia to govern effectively. To illustrate this, let's look at some historical examples. In Iraq, after the US invasion, widespread discontent emerged as many Iraqis viewed the new government as illegitimate and imposed by foreign powers. This perception fueled insurgency and violence, undermining any attempts to establish lasting governance. Similarly, in Afghanistan, the Taliban's resurgence can be traced back to the failure of the US-backed government to gain popular support, which was seen as a puppet regime. As journalist and author Dexter Filkin stated, the real challenge is not just winning the war, but winning the peace, and that is often much harder. In Ukraine, the situation could mirror these precedents. If Russia were to install a government that lacks popular support or is viewed as a puppet regime, it could face significant resistance. Historical examples, such as the Arab Spring, also highlight how quickly public sentiment can shift, leading to uprisings against regimes perceived as illegitimate. Therefore, Russia's challenge in maintaining control would not only be military but fundamentally political, as the population's acceptance is crucial for stable governance. In conclusion, if Russia were to achieve a military victory in Ukraine, the path to maintaining control would be fraught with challenges. The financial burdens of reconstruction, coupled with the likelihood of ongoing resistance from a proud and defiant population, could lead to a scenario where Russia finds itself more isolated than ever. International sanctions could cripple the Russian economy, leading to domestic unrest and political instability. This situation could mirror the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the subsequent disintegration of the Soviet Union, where the weight of economic strain and the demand for freedom proved too great to bear. As Russia grapples with these immense challenges, Russian dictator may face a dire future, a legacy tarnished by a costly war that has only deepened divisions and weakened his grip on power. The question remains, can Russia truly sustain its hold on Ukraine, or will it become a costly endeavor that ultimately leads to its own downfall? So, what do you think? Will history repeat itself, or is there a different outcome on the horizon? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more in-depth analysis on this evolving situation. Your voice matters, and together we can keep the conversation going.